All right, so the first thing I want to do today is again recap what we did for scenario one. So we set up our savings goal as a straight line. In my case, I turned that into a dashed black line to make it look nice and clean. That's our target. In my case, it's the 42,440. Then we entered our lump sum scenario, our exponential growth formula, where we set aside a certain amount of money. That's this p value out in front. And we multiply it by 1 plus our interest rate. In this case, I used the 0.06 for bonds. And then we raised it to the t power. And that gave us this green line here. That's the amount of money we have in our investment or in our savings. And we played around with these two numbers, right? We could change our initial investment to change when we reach our goal, or we could change our interest rate to change when we reach our goal. And we played around with those two numbers to find a situation that worked for us. And for me, it came at $10,000 invested up front and an interest rate of 0.06, which was associated with our bonds. Make sure as you're working through to save your Desmos project every once in a while so that you do not lose your progress. So once you have this, you'll want to summarize it in your report. So here's kind of an example of what that looks like. We have our formula. So I screenshotted that from Desmos. We have our graph. Again, I screenshotted that from Desmos. And then you're also going to have kind of a summary of your scenario. So here is mine. And I have this stuff color coded to kind of help you see exactly kind of what you need. And how you present this is going to be up to you, but all this stuff has to be required or be included. So I have the $10,000 in principal investment. I invested in bonds. It's going to take 24.8 years to reach my savings goal. And again, that's something we can grab from our graph here if we hover over that point. Over this time, I will have earned 32,440 in interest. And remember, that's just a quick subtraction problem. My goal was 42,440. And I can subtract that initial investment, that principal investment, to get 32,440. Then I had this last paragraph here is kind of our pros, cons, realistic. We want some narrative in that scenario, or in speaking to those things. So in this, it results in a lot of interest with medium risk, but takes a long time to accomplish. Additionally, I might find it difficult to get $10,000 to set aside now. I believe this scenario is realistic, but not ideal. So, speaking of something that might be more ideal, we are moving to scenario two today. And this is making recurring contributions over time. So, we're going to add a new formula to our Desmos. We're going to play around with these numbers. And notice that in this formula, the big change here, other than the mess inside, is that we are changing this variable P to M. And that's going to stand for our annual contribution to our investment. So if you go over to your Desmos project, what we can do is we can add a brand new line underneath here. Before we do that, let's turn off our first line by clicking this green circle. So I turn that off, and I'm going to add a new line with my scenario 2 formula, A of t equals m times, that's our shift 8. We're going to go parentheses, and I'm going to add a fraction right off the bat by hitting our slash sign. On top, I'm going to go parentheses 1 plus r parentheses to the t minus 1. And on bottom, I will have r. And we'll want to close that parentheses out. So just like before, don't do sliders. And we can start plugging in our numbers. So I think I'm going to start playing around with, let's just kind of match my first scenario, all right? 0.06, let's say I still invest with bonds. Notice how I have to replace both instances of r in this equation. And instead of setting aside $10,000 every month, maybe let's set aside, or every year, maybe let's set aside $1,000 every year and see how quickly we achieve our goal then. So you'll notice that our graph starts at 0 this time, right? We don't have a lump sum that we're setting aside at the beginning. So we're starting at 0 and we're going to set aside $1,000 every year. We invest that money, so it's growing at the 0.06%. And if I look at this, my graph intersects at 22 years. So I actually think that I can set aside probably more than that every year. I think I could probably handle $100 every month. And that would reach me to 100 times 12 would be 1200 every month. And so that boosts my timeline up a little bit more, right? 19.5. Well, let's see if I wanted to get even more aggressive. Let's say I wanted to set aside $200 every month. So if I go $200 every month times 12, that would equal the 2400. Okay, so let's clear that. Let's plug that into our annual contribution 2400. And boom, now I'm reaching my investment in 12.4 years. So this is really freeing me up to maybe accept a little less risk, right? I'm in bonds right now with my 0.06, which might be a little risky for me. So maybe I want to move to a high yield savings at this point and adjust that to 0.04. And you can see that I'm still achieving my goal in 13.6 years. I'm setting aside $200 every month, so that $2,400 per year. And I'm still reaching my goal faster than my previous scenario, right? Let's make this graph blue, my new one, and let's throw our old graph back on. If we compare the two, my lump sum, I set aside 10,000 to start, which is a difficult amount of money to just have lying around. And investing in bonds, which carries medium risk, it took me 24.8 years. But if I set aside $200 every month or $2,400 a year, I follow this blue graph. And even in a safer account with high yield savings, I reach my goal at 13.6 years. So I'm going to remind you to save your Desmos graph every once in a while so we don't lose our progress. So we then need to kind of formalize or summarize our scenario again. So just like before, our formula and graph, we're going to pull from Desmos. We can do a screenshot of that from Desmos for both our formula and our graph and put it in the project. But then the rest of the questions are kind of following the same thing. Our type of investment here. This one we did our high yield savings. The time required to reach the goal, let's go back and check my graph. I have the intersection at 13.6, so it's going to be 13.6 years. 13.6 years. My principal investment, we're going to have to do a little bit of calculation here. If I'm doing $1,200 a month or $1,200 a year, and I'm doing that for 13.6 years, so times 13.6, then my, if we pull up a calculator here, my overall investment is 1,200 times 13.6. It's going to be $16,320. So $16,320. So the interest earned then is going to be our goal number, the 42,440. So 42,440 minus that 16,320. And again, if we pull up our calculator here, 42,440 minus 16,320, we'll get $26,120. So $26,120. And just like before, we'll kind of wrap that up with a commentary on our pros, our cons, and how realistic this is. And I think, hey, for pros, we're still getting a good amount of interest, right? That's $26,000 of free money that I'm getting. My cons is that, hey, compared to my scenario one, I am spending more of my own money. But a pro of that is I'm setting aside a little bit at a time to achieve that. And so I would say that this is a much more realistic scenario than scenario one, because I'm able to afford my house and my bills and all my other things while also saving for this goal. So our kind of checklist for today to be on track is completing scenario two. We're running through our Desmos project. Then we're adding all of these components to our project, our formula, graph, and our summary.